please remember to leave a like, a comment, share the video about, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Thank you. Well, isn't this just fantastic? Captain's log, subdates 230626.7. We've maintained our position over the weekend as we need to be certain that this NPC mob is the worst of it. We might be forced to send a dummy out to test their hunger, a dummy of which I happen to have in abundance. Oh, bork! Before we start this video, I would like to say the following, a disclaimer of sorts. My videos are done within the idea of a submarine, yes, or a spaceship under the water, in this case, shuttle pod. It is not, based on the topic we're covering today, a slide dig or a shot at anyone we're speaking of concerning the tragedy that has unfolded, where somebody else, a group of somebody else's, in a submarine have suffered a fate that I would not wish on anyone. Tragedies that happen in the ocean, of course, are tragedies. You don't have to care, but when on social media you do have to pick your words a bit more carefully, and I have to insert this disclaimer because somebody might think that it is a poor taste joke. Somebody that might be new to the channel, for example. Not that that happens very often, I still have to do it regardless. Many of you will undoubtedly have heard about a private venture. This private venture included a number of people in a submarine, I believe made of a rather unusual material, which surprised me because I didn't think it would do so well at such a low level. The point of which involved a Titanic, one of the greatest tragedies to ever take place in the ocean itself. The second being the fact that Leonardo DiCaprio could have in fact survived. British billionaire and adventurer Hamish Harding, one of those on board the submersible, posted to Facebook, due to the worst winter in Newfoundland in 40 years, this mission is likely to be the first and only manned mission to the Titanic in 2023. A weather window has just opened up and we are going to attempt a dive tomorrow. This is a picture of the Titan, operated by OceanGate Expeditions. On Sunday 8 AM, the submersible originally aimed to start its descent, according to a post by Hamish Harding on Instagram. It actually started its descent later, according to the US Coast Guard. By 12 PM, the submersible starts what should be a 2-hour descent to the Titanic wreck, which is nearly 4,000 meters down. At 1:45, communications between the submersible and the surface vessel are lost 1 hour and 45 minutes after its descent. 7 PM, the Titan was scheduled to return to the surface, but it failed to appear. At 9 PM, the US Coast Guard received the report of an overdue submersible from the research vessel Polar Prince, about 900 nautical miles east of Cape Cod on the US coast. I'm giving you this timeline of events because how one responds to this and how one conflates it, all of which is foreshadowing you're welcome, is remarkable, especially if it is conflated with migrants on boats and accidents taking place. It is a false equivalence, someone does it, and we're going to get to it soon. Others have done it as well. We're going to go to one more notable name soon. Continuing with Monday, US and Canadian ships and planes swarmed the area, dropping sonar buoys that can monitor to a depth of almost 4,000 meters. On Tuesday, France says it will help with the search by deploying Atalante, a ship equipped with a deep-sea diving vessel, which was expected to arrive late on Wednesday. Canadian Lockheed P-3 Orion aircraft detected sounds over several hours. They are equipped with gear to trace submarines. It was alleged the sound was banging sounds. Around this time, Iron Lung started trending all over Twitter. On Wednesday, Canadian P-3 aircraft detected the underwater noises. The US Coast Guard increased the search area to 2 times the size of Connecticut. On Thursday, it was believed that the air supply in the Titan, which was 96 hours, would run out. Around 12 PM, 2 remotely operated vehicles have been deployed as part of the search effort. Around 3 PM, the Canadian Navy ship carrying a medical team specializing in dive medicine arrives on the scene. 3:48, the Coast Guard says a debris field was discovered within the search area. 7 PM, the US Coast Guard hold a press conference announcing the discovery of the debris. At 8 PM, 5 crew members aboard the submersible Titan were probably killed instantly in a catastrophic implosion. That is the quote from Rear Admiral John Mauger, the 1st Coast Guard District Commander. Now you have a timeline of what has happened, a very brief one, I might add. I want to talk about Ash Sarkar, who is an absolute div that needs to be called out for being an absolute div. When tragedies like this happen, and I'll add those that involve migrants on boats or in dinghies crossing various bodies of water, tragedies happen and people pass away, you do not use it as a political point. you'll find those that are in politics are smart enough to know the optics of the situation to realise they can't use it as a political point, because to do so would make them look like the biggest shithouse on the planet. Isn't it lucky that Ash Sarkar is not a politician then? You'll understand why in a moment. What sent me down a rabbit hole of archiving about a dozen tweets from Ash Sarkar was this tweet from Count Dibula. There are no important gender identity projects. Go F yourself with this nonsense. Included here you have, if the super rich can spend £250,000 on vanity jaunts miles beneath the ocean, then they're not being taxed enough. An article by The Guardian. At time of recording, I couldn't find this article, but there's a possibility this did exist and it was removed. So I went to Ash Sarkar's Twitter, Ayo Caesar, and I started archiving loads and loads of tweets, and the very first one was of that fake possible real article. Yeah, they're not being taxed enough. We get well-funded public services, they get saved from consequences of their own hubris. What's not to like? I would say for the sake of it, if you are trying to be the arbiter of what is or is not enough tax, you are also trying to be the arbiter of what people do with their money and their time. Others will respond with taxation is theft. And there is an argument for it if you believe the entire point of working is to pay into the system, and that you are not allowed to have luxury, to be able to do things like this. Granted, this has not gone the way people would have hoped, of course not. But to use it to make this kind of point, one of 2 points you make, reeks of bad optics, but we'll get to more soon. Someone had replied to her with, the youngest is just 19. She retweeted it with, I have enormous pity for what must be a terrifying experience. And should the worst have happened, an awful way to die. I have absolutely no time for the arrogance of the endeavour, both on the part of OceanGate and the billionaires who paid for their services. Not everywhere on this earth should be a tourist destination or a space for commercial enterprise. To which another person has replied, because Ash Sarkar is Muslim, very proud of it in her bio, most Islamic majority countries are certainly out for most as a tourist destination, particularly gays, trans and women. Bit of a deflection, but it's nice to point at somebody when they have a little bit of a hypocrisy. In this instance, I also disagree with Ash Sarkar. The idea that not everywhere on this earth should be a tourist destination. Who are you to be the arbiter of where we can and cannot go? Seriously, do you believe there should be a world police in effect, an army, perhaps a military, to make sure people don't go to certain places? That feels very authoritarian. A user by the name of Tony McDonough retweeted Ash Sarkar by saying, while 5 people, including a teenager, slowly suffocate in what will be a terrifying end to their lives, let us use their plight as a convenient vehicle for our ideological hobby horses. Ash Sarkar, it is terrifying and it is awful. It was also totally, completely unnecessary. From the unregulated and uncertified technology used by OceanGate to paying $250,000 to gawp at a deep-sea mass grave. OceanGate thought they were smarter than the regulators. We're not talking about people forced into unseaworthy vessels out of desperation, we're talking about obscenely wealthy individuals without an ounce of humility. While there are lessons to be learned with regards to how this was operated, you are again missing a clear point here, and you are trying to blame them just because they did it. But there is another point we still haven't gotten to yet. She has included, by the way, 2 images, one of the Vessel Safety Act of 1993. There are rules in place for all of this. I 100% understand that. And that is something that will be dealt with soon, no doubt. There's enough press on this that it has to be. But while you are willing to concede that this is a tragedy, you are still making a fundamental error. And it is showing, while you say they lack humility, you lack humanity, which seems somewhat contradictory to that one elusive point I have yet to get to. The Titanic submarine is a modern morality tale of what happens when you have too much money, and the grotesque inequality of sympathy, attention, and aid for those without it. Migrants are meant to die at sea, billionaires aren't. Exhibit A retweet of Zoe Gardner. The Titanic sub-billionaire rescue mission is entering final hours of hope to find survivors. Meanwhile, in Italy and Greece, search and rescue to save people at sea is criminalized. Pierre Klemp is among those facing jail for rescuing migrants. Earlier I showed you this image, because this is where people have started to conflate the two. You cannot compare the two, they are nothing alike. They're really not. In fact, the circumstances are so different. To compare the two is intellectually dishonest. It shows how rather hypocritical, how lacking in humanity and humility you are and have, you possess. It's quite astonishing to me that somebody can make these kind of points as if the bigger point can be equated or as if one can be measured against the other, and because one is selfish, okay, and one is totally selfless. There should be a sarcasm sign around here for all this, by the way, because that's not the case. Economic migrants are a thing, seriously. But because of that, one is worth more of our time and effort than the other, which is how you paint this, how others paint this. It is a way of taking away the attention from the one issue at hand, because apparently this issue now needs to be raised on top of the other issue, or treated as if it's on par or above. In the heat of this moment, that is not what people are talking about. They're talking about these people in a submarine and hopefully find them before they run out of air. Not spend your time on Twitter effectively shitting on them before they've even been found, which is what Ash Sarkar is doing. That's why I put these tweets in order, because they hadn't been found at this point. Judith Holofens had said what most of us would be thinking here. Ash, do you think it's possible that people can be horrified by both scenarios? If you can't, then that's a you thing. To which someone replied, hold on, I need to check if the number 500 is bigger than 5. Reply, each one of those 500 was an individual with a family with a precious life, with people who loved them and cared about them, as are the 5 people in the Heath Robinson designed sub. Both are horrendous situations. This is where I 100% agree with Judith. It's a false equivalence. How can Ash Sarkar, who gets so much airtime, so many opportunities on television that she rejects, which we'll get to soon, don't worry, it's totally because she rejects it, not because she is, at this point, a blithering idiot, be so stunted and yet championed at the same time? It is actually embarrassing. But don't worry everyone, I'm not finished. We have more. Ash Sarkar retweeted Judith by saying, I'm not sure that it's a me thing that the world is united in a search and rescue operation for these 5 individuals, while migrants are left to drown by the hundreds in European waters. It's not about one's personal sense of horror, it's about the political priorities. Reply, the submarine guys weren't criminal invaders. But to make the point, there is a clapback that makes it even trickier to properly articulate. So we'll say, for example, those who are on those boats take huge risk to seek what they deem a better life, many of whom have been busted as being nothing more than an economic migrant. For the most part, they are illegally doing this. It is illegal. There is no law in place saying someone can't be in a submarine and go down, but there is a law broken there as well. I am very much aware of this. Thank you for pointing it out. But that, again, is a massive deflection from the original point. And again, Ash Sarkar is completely missing it, because now she's latched onto something else and said, no, this is worse. Because those migrants want a better life, these guys have a better life and they've thrown it away. That's what it is. Piers Morgan, actually, the real morality tale from this is how horrifically non-compassionate you, #BeKind woke mob, can be. Ash replies, I don't recall saying be kind. To be honest, she may never have actually said it, but she is a part of the woke mob who do often tout the be kind tag. Richard Bacon, were you the one, the journalist? Said, no, stop it. It's totally legitimate to say it's mad we don't put this empathy onto migrant boats. Totally legitimate. But don't dehumanize these people. There's a kid on there who's a student in Glasgow. Today his mum lost him and her husband after awful hours of false hope. Ash Sarkar, what has happened is a tragedy, and I feel immense pity for the families. It's also a tragedy born of hubris, and it's not dehumanizing to say that the attitude of OceanGate and their move fast and break things disdain for safety regulations got these people killed. Again though, a deflection from the issue, the humanity aspect, because you're ignoring it. You're selecting when to show humanity and empathy and deciding because they're wealthy, they're not worthy of that humanity. Now, Ash Sarkar has received a lot of negativity in DMs. For example, against anti-Semitism and wokeism. You are a vile, horrible bish. You need beating, you whore. Shame Daddy didn't honor that. To then follow up with an apology. Ash didn't like it. Later on, she tweeted, I think if you're going to chortle along with someone calling me a slut, you lose the right to do the moralistic finger wagging about how my tweets overstep the mark. Quotes around overstep the mark. While I don't support slut shaming, if that's the part you're going to hyper-focus on, and then make that the point to wash away someone else's criticism, the point went over your head. To which someone has replied, I just said FFS, scroll past. Making these comments about you says more about them than you. To which she replied, I very much appreciate people who disagree and manage to do so without resorting to abuse or harassment. Reply, you been offered any TV appearances yet on the back of your views? The answer to that is, by the way, no. The last tweet I have saved has 2 images from the Express. The tweet, "Hey Cook Millie, I really don't mind people criticising me, but perhaps you and the Daily Express would care to explain what the musician MIA, whose picture you've used, has to do with it." Because they got the wrong person instead of Ash Sarkar. It's not hard to find a picture of her. She's the one that looks like a shrew, a very vapid shrew. Yeah, a shrew. Yeah. She looks like an idiot. How about that? Race plays no part. Stupidity is everywhere. If common sense were a qualification, no one would have it. And she doesn't have common sense. She has selective humanity, selective humility, and contradicts her own politics on the daily. Hyper-focuses on four-letter words because she thinks that's the takeaway point, where it can be made, an argument that is, with profanity and still be just as valid as someone that can articulate a critical point without it. You just are looking for an excuse to be offended because you're dumb and you're trying to argue with people on Twitter. You are no better than any of the keyboard warriors that have criticized you with those four-letter words that you've hyper-focused on because their points don't mean anything, but I will retweet images of their tweets. I'll subtweet them because I'm smart. You woke idiots are beyond predictable. You know, as we're still here, I was holding off rendering this until the day of release, in fact, because I wanted to see what Ash Sarkar would say next. Essentially, rinse, repeat, regurgitated points. She didn't make any discernible change to her perspective because she knows she can be as big and brave as she wants, and she can use victim cards to avoid accountability. So instead, we're going to go to Canada to respond to a video being shared on Twitter of a bearded, balding incel who has all the insight and opinion that you all desperately don't need. Foodie Beauty's ex-housemate, Peetz.
Greg, any thoughts on the missing submarine? Ha! Yes, I've heard about the sub. And I've laughed about it.
There are optics involved, and some people like to be contrarian about it, or seem like they're better than it. Yes, Peetz is no exception to this. When people say that they love his channel is effectively dead, which it is, he can fob it off as saying, I just do this for fun, but the only reason you say that is because this is no longer a feasible option for a source of income, because your bad takes, which there are plenty of, keep on coming to the surface.
Any nutbags willing to go into an experimental craft with a horrible track record that is assembled with used parts are lost cause. Yep! Genuine Titanic experience. Yep! Bunch of rich people dying in the ocean. What's a more authentic Titanic experience than that? Serving subs all day. Long gone, not to... Yeah, and I don't feel bad for them. No idea the Titanic sinks a little close to Canada. Yeah, I often forget about that great value. I do forget how close it was to Canada. Yeah, it's like way closer to Canada than to England.
This creature is a genius of our time and must be protected at all costs. If you've made it this far into the video, I want to take the opportunity to promote two alternative platforms. The first is Rumble. I have an end-of-year goal to try and hit 1,000 followers there by the end of the year. I upload regular content there, 2 to 4 times a week. So semi-regular, yeah. If you're interested in following me there, my channel link is in the pinned comment, above all the sources for this video. The second platform is Kick, where I'm going to start streaming there, but I need to get 75 followers to be able to get in that eligibility aspect for affiliate status, right? And if all goes to plan, then I may move to that platform full time because Twitch is going down the shitter, quite frankly. Any support would be hugely appreciated. Thank you.